Hey guys, welcome to BudgetEDH. On this week's episode, we bring you the top 10 budget cards out of Modern Horizons. We'll define budget in this video as cards that are under $5 as of the current recording. These don't necessarily go in order of power or rank. These are just great cards that you could be picking up now that are under $5 in Modern Horizons, and cards that will see a lot of play in Commander. The first set of cards I want to talk about are the new Talismans. And in Modern Horizons, we have access to 5 new talismans in new colors. The talismans that I like the most are the ones that do not have green in the color. These are colors that will need access to ramp, and having a new 2 mana cost artifact that can ramp you is really important in these decks. These artifacts are going to be played in just about every EDH deck that can use them, especially the non-green versions. And at under $1, these cards are really great, and you should pick them up now if you don't already have them. Next up, we have Collector Oof. It's 1 and a green for a creature. Activated abilities of artifacts can't be activated. This is basically a null rod on a creature, and it is in green, which is important because a lot of tutors have look for a green creature in your library. And not only that, a lot of the stacks and hate bearer type creatures are in white or green. So having this card be a green creature is definitely an advantage, and this card actually could be better than Null Rod because it is on a creature and you can search for it with something like Chord of Calling, Green Sun Zenith. Having this be on a creature is definitely an advantage, and this is a card that is a low cost creature that has a very powerful ability. I wouldn't wait to pick this creature up. I would suggest getting it now at under $5 because I could see this one increasing in price, not only because it's going to be good in Commander, but it could also see play in some other formats, especially Modern, as a sideboard card. It is a good time to pick this card up. The next card I want to talk about is Force of Vigor. It's 2 green for an instant. If it's not your turn, you may exile a green card from your hand rather than pay this spell's mana cost, and destroy up to 2 target artifacts and or enchantments. This card is really great. It gives you a way to interact when it's not your turn if your opponents play a very powerful artifact or enchantment, or an artifact and enchantment that may possibly lock you out of the game. Any of the stacks effects like Stasis, Winter Orb, any of the powerful artifacts that your opponent could potentially win the game with, like Isochron Scepter, Paradox Engine, any of those cards, Force of Vigor is going to give you a way to interact in a deck that you may not already be able to interact. If you're playing a deck that's heavy on creatures or a deck where you want to be tapping out, being able to leave up Force of Vigor without having to leave mana up and slow yourself down is a very powerful ability, and this is something that I could imagine seeing in most green decks. The next card I want to talk about is Goblin Engineer. It's 1 and a red for a creature. When Goblin Engineer enters the battlefield, you may search your library for an artifact card, put it into your graveyard, then shuffle your library. You can pay red and tap it to sacrifice an artifact, return target artifact with converted mana cost 3 or less from your graveyard to the battlefield. This is a powerful ability and one that works well with decks that want to have artifacts in your graveyard, decks that would also use something like Goblin Welder. This is something that's similar to Stoneforge Mystic, and you can use this to get a lot of the swords from your deck to put in your graveyard to put onto the battlefield. You could also use this to get a lot of the powerful mana rock, or also some of the more powerful artifacts like Isochron Scepter are also under 3 mana cost, and being able to get these on turn 2 into your graveyard and potentially untap with Goblin Engineer, and then you're able to get one of those powerful artifacts from your graveyard onto the battlefield is a powerful ability in an Artifacts Matters deck. The next card I want to talk about is Hall of Helias Generosity. It's a legendary land that you can tap to add colorless to your mana pool, and you can pay 1 and a white and tap it. Put target enchantment card from your graveyard on top of your library. This is an enchantment version of Academy Ruins that does the same thing for artifacts. And if you're playing an enchantment-based deck, anything that cares about enchantments, this is a card that you want to include into your deck that will give you some protection if your opponents are able to destroy one of your enchantments. This is a great card and is an auto-include in any of the Enchantress type decks. Next up, we have Tribute Mage, and Tribute Mage is 2 and a blue for creature human wizard. When it enters the battlefield, you may search your library for an artifact card with converted mana cost 2. Reveal that card, put it into your hand, and shuffle your library. Now this card's going to be able to find you a bunch of mana rocks that cost 2 mana, including Felwar Stone, all of the Talismans, Mind Stone, Thought Vessel, etc. In addition, it does find you one of the most powerful artifacts that a blue deck would want, and that's Isochron Scepter. If you do play Isochron Scepter in your deck, you should include Tribute Mage as a way to find it, and this is going to be really good in those Isochron Dramatic Scepter infinite mana builds, especially ones that play artifacts in them. You do want this card in the deck, and this is a great card that they printed to find it. The next card I want to talk about is Generous Gift. Generous Gift is 2 and a white for an instant. Destroy target permanent. Its controller creates a 3/3 green elephant creature token. Now this card is similar to Beast Within, but in white. If you're playing a white deck and you need some removal to take care of problematic permanents, Generous Gift is going to be a great card to include in your deck. Getting rid of any permanent that you may run into and giving your opponent a 3/3 creature is an exchange that you'd be willing to make. This card can get rid of anything including lands, so this is a great card to include in your deck and one that we'll find in a lot of EDH decks going forward. The next card I want to talk about is a common, and it's Springbloom Druid. It's 2 and a green for a creature elf druid. When Springbloom Druid enters the battlefield, you may sacrifice a land. If you do, search your library for up to 2 basic land cards, put them onto the battlefield tapped, then shuffle your library. This card is really great. It has Harrow attached to it, which is a spell version of the same exact ability. Having this be attached to a permanent actually makes this a little bit better, in that you could play this in something like Muldrotha or Marin and get a lot of value off of it. This also would work well with Lord Windgrace and any of the lands matter builds. Having it attached to a creature gives you additional value if you're able to blink the creature, if you're able to sack it and replay the creature later, or if you care about having lands in your graveyard or you're able to replay them from your graveyard. This is a great way of doing this, and it has a synergy with a lot of the different commanders that utilize the graveyard. This is a great creature to include in this deck, and one that we'll find will most likely be a commander staple in those decks. The last card I want to talk about is Sisa Weatherlight Captain. It's 2 and a white for a legendary creature, and it gets +1/+1 for each color among other legendary permanents you control. And you can pay a Wooburg to search your library for a legendary permanent card with converted mana costs less than Sisa's power, put that card onto the battlefield, then shuffle your library. While I don't think that Sisa is as good as her green-white version where she can tap to search for a legendary card and put it into your hand, I do think that this version is powerful and could be a fun commander to build. There are a lot of legendary permanent cards that are under 2 that are powerful, and the more you play, the more that you'll be able to search up with Sisa as her power increases. Another way that you can build this is by having some legendary equipment in your deck that makes Sisa's power even larger so that you're able to search for some more powerful cards. And being able to put any legendary permanent card onto the battlefield is a very powerful ability and one that you could abuse in a deck like this, especially since you don't need to tap Sisa to use the ability. Next up, we have EULA's Influence. Green, green, green for an enchantment. Discard a land card, create a 2/2 green bear creature token. Now this card's going to be really good in any of the lands matters decks. So Lord Windgrace, Tatiova, this card would be a card that you could include in that deck to get rid of some of the extra lands that you may have sitting in your hand to create some extra creatures, and also help fill your graveyard with lands for something like Gitrog Monster or Windgrace that they want to have lands in their graveyard. And this just gives you another powerful ability of discarding cards, create some additional value over the course of the game. Thank you so much for taking the time to watch our video today. If you haven't already, subscribe to our YouTube channel and check us out on social media on Facebook, Twitter, or Reddit. We'll see you next time.